Today I'm going to talk about the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of tarot. I'm getting lots of feedback on my tarot videos, and it occurred to me that people might be coming to them without any knowledge of what the deck is, where it comes from, and how it works. And so I'm going to give you a rundown of predictive, prescriptive, and descriptive issues related to tarot as a deck and as a complete psychology and psychological map of human development and transformation. Thanks very much for tuning in. My name is Shannon Douglas. I do a regular Tarot Tuesday video and put up a vlog additionally once a week on larger archetypal topics that affect us in the world. I would call myself an alchemist, and if you want to follow along with my thoughts and explorations in the domain of alchemy and the magic of self-transformation as it's been described and accounted for in traditions around the world, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and let me know in the comments if you've got any questions or thoughts around the explorations that I'm going through. So why is studying tarot and traditions that surround it useful in the world that we live in? Well, a part of that answer is going to come from the modern reinvention and reimagining of tarot as it happened a little over 100 years ago. Now, there's 2 anniversaries to celebrate, and I'm going to tie them together. It's 2020, obviously, we all know that. It's been an interesting year. 2021 is the 100th anniversary of the publication of Carl Jung's personality types. And that was a birth, a milestone in psychology, in the development or the analysis of how human personality comes together, and to try and create a rational language and framework around what our personalities are. And we pat ourselves on the back and we think, fantastic, science has finally figured out personality. But the knowledge of personality science has been around for many thousands of years, and it exists in cultures all over the world. And tarot is one of the ways that we map that set of personality types out, and it was part of a set of tools that allowed us to convey knowledge from one generation to the next in pre-literate environments about how people work. So it's a psychology. And the reinvention of tarot a little over 100 years ago came out of a secret society or a mystery tradition, a mystery school called the Order of the Golden Dawn. And around the same time, the mid to late 1800s, all over the world, there was the developed world anyway. We're going through a crisis of meaning, and many people say that in the age that we're currently in, and the times that we're currently in, we're also going through a major crisis of meaning. And in the late 1800s, this crisis of meaning was manifesting as all kinds of cults and mystery schools and esoteric traditions, and we were discovering cultures from all over the world, and academics were bringing back the stories of traditions from India and China, and even rural villages in Europe and on the continent. And we were even starting to gather stories from the indigenous people of North America. And those were all coming together, and there was an opportunity to synthesize some of this knowledge that was carried through oral tradition and cultures all over the world, and to create some maps and benchmarks on what that is. And the people who created tarot did exactly that, or the people who reinvented tarot and remapped it did exactly that. The modern tarot that we have was a reinvention, and the first cards that we have in terms of historical benchmark, I believe they were the 1300s, early 1400s in Italy, and there are still some surviving cards from that deck. They were painted as a gift to a princess, if I'm not mistaken. They exist now in a museum, and they still hold the same archetypal structure and sequence and names as we do in modern tarot, or very, very close. And come around the late 1800s, early 1900s, the deck had gone through numerous iterations. It was popular in France and in Italy and in Europe as a card game, and also had been developing or was being used as a divination tool for people to attempt to predict the future and understand the present. And so this reinvention of tarot was a remapping of it based on a number of different traditions, 4 of them as a matter of fact. Kabbalah, which is a Jewish mystical tradition, or Hebrew mystical tradition, that's based on a psychological map of the psyche. And we go back in that tradition, I believe, to the 1100s. The text is called the Sefer Yetzirah. Now, the other piece that gets tied in is alchemy. Alchemy in the four elements, and the roots of alchemy in Hermetic tradition and Hermetic tradition itself. We have documentation and texts from 200, 250 AD in that era there, called the Corpus Hermeticum and the Emerald Tablets. The other influencer that's coded into the deck is numerology and gematria. And numerology, gematria goes back to the roots of our language and the phonetic alphabet. It connects to the original 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, but goes even farther back into the origins of the symbols that we use for our language into the Phoenician culture, and even roots back into Egypt in the symbols that we use for language. Those symbols, those 22 symbols that we use that became writing, were actually powerful magical symbols in original tradition. The last of the four that ties all these together, and there's tons of overlap between these traditions, is astrology. So the reinvention called the rider-waite tarot, which was published in the early 1900s, contains maps of the Kabbalah, alchemy in the four elements, numerology and gematria, and astrology. And it's a mnemonic tool, or a pictorial set of memory keys to help teach and train and transfer knowledge from one generation to the next, or one person to the next, in a way that's psychologically sticky. And in order for us to be able to memorize things, and at one time in history, and even to the present day, there are people who are able to memorize verbatim massive amounts of information. There's a Muslim tradition of memorizing and reciting and performing the Quran in its entirety, and there's a whole set of tools, psychological tools and memory tools that people use in order to be able to do this effectively. And so I view tarot, or astrology, or gematria, or Kabbalah as mnemonic sets, or symbolic sets that contain discrete and comprehensive psychological maps. Analogous to this is the Hindu chakra system that dates back into the Vedic traditions, where we have a map of energy centers. I'm sure you've seen pictures and images of these. I'll pop some up of energy centers or psychic centers in the body that allow us to classify and categorize information. So that's the structure of tarot, and sort of the underpinnings of why it works. Now, we connect tarot to modern playing cards. In modern playing cards, there's 52 cards in the deck. We usually get a joker or two in there. 13 cards in each suits, ace through 10, and then a jack, a queen, and a king. And there's 4 suits in tarot as well, besides the hearts, clubs, spades, and diamonds in normal playing cards. And those 4 suits are cups, pentacles or coins, swords, and wands or staves, and those correspond very closely to modern playing cards, except there's 14 cards in the suit. In addition to the ace through 10, we have a page, which fills a role in the court of messenger, and then we have the knight, the queen, and the king. So we have, if we look at the 4 suits, those 4 suits correspond to the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and air. And we have a personality type map then, with 16 characters. 4 characters from the suit of earth, 4 characters from the suit of water, 4 from fire, and 4 from air. And those correspond to all of the modern 4-quadrant personality type theories that we have and we use in business and science and psychology and in communications training in all kinds of applications. Nothing has changed. And those 4 elements have been around in our knowledge and understanding for at least 2,500 years. There is references to them in early writings of classical Hellenistic philosophers and in Alexandria, and we started to map out these things. But before even that, we had the 4 cardinal points of the year in astrology, and those 4 elements, those 4 suits, correspond also to winter, spring, summer, and fall. Now, Kabbalah as a tradition has a lot of similarities to the chakra system. You can see it here on the screen as I put it up. And there are 10 sephira. Those are 10 sort of psychic phases or psychic energies that we can experience in our human existence. And to give you the rundown on the chakras, we start with the physical body at the root, the bone structure, digestive system, and all the stories and knowledge and wisdom and medicine that goes along with that. As we move to the second chakra, just below the navel, we get into our reproductive system and all the structures and all the knowledge around not just reproduction, but relationship and family and tribal connections. Then we get into power structures and the element of fire. We get into altruism and virtue in the heart chakra, creativity and communication, insight and knowledge, and then connection to the divine. It's a map. And we can debate over whether these things are real or not, in terms of can we measure them? Are they real energy? But they do exist at the very least in the psychic plane. Now, I'm going to say two things here to qualify that. So last year in a debate between Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris, Eric Weinstein, who's an evolutionary biologist who was facilitating and helping navigate the conversation between those two powerful intellectuals, added some of his own very profound knowledge to the conversation about religion. And he said, maybe or likely religion isn't literally true, but it's useful. It has adaptive utility. And from an evolutionary perspective, religion as a social construct and social institution was very useful in facilitating the growth and development of human society. And so structures like the Kabbalah, structures like the chakra system, structures like any symbolic set, the original symbolic alphabet that we had from the Phoenician culture, Egyptian hieroglyphs, all of those things, the medicine wheel from indigenous people in North America, maybe they're not literally true. The map is not the territory. But there's utility that goes along with the knowledge that they're conveyed. And my argument is that one of the primal utilitarian functions of things like tarot, astrology, Kabbalah, and alchemy have to do with their capacity to facilitate memory and to pass down knowledge from one generation to the next. So getting on to the fifth suit of tarot, this is a suit that doesn't appear in modern playing cards. We call it the major arcana. And there's 22 cards in the arcana, not coincidentally to the 22 letters in the original Phoenician alphabet, the original Hebrew alphabet. Now, in my experience, I'm not sure that they map exactly to those specific those symbols, but they reinforce for us what those are. And in modern psychological terms, the major arcana in the first 10 cards, so that's 0 card, the Fool, through the 9 card, they reflect the development of the individual. And as we go through what we call the card called the Wheel of Fortune is the number 10, we go from 11 through to 21. The next 10 cards are about the psychic structures and archetypal transitions and issues that we confront in life as individuated persons. I've made the case before that the first set of cards in tarot, the ones that outline the individual development and growth, parallel very closely with Carl Jung's ideas of the self, as he maps out in the book Ion. The Magician and the Priestess, the number 1 and 2 cards in the deck, correspond to the somatic experience, so that's the physical experience of our consciousness and our awareness. And the number 2 card, the High Priestess, corresponds to the psychic experience that we have. Those are distinctions that Carl Jung made. As we get into the next 2 cards, the Empress and the Emperor, we get into things like anima and animus and male archetype and female archetype. And Jung describes those as the syzygy. Then we get into larger constructs of the self as we get into the Lover's card, the Chariot, strength, and onto the individuated self, the Hermit. And we have modern psychological maps of development that very much parallel the kinds of development outlined in this tradition that dates back in cards over 600 years. And the knowledge that we have in development of through those 22 symbols goes back thousands of years. The letter, from a biblical tradition, we get the Alpha and the Omega. This is what God says to Moses, if I'm not mistaken, in the burning bush. I'm the beginning and the end and everything in between. He was referring... God was saying, I am the sum total of all of your symbols. I am the summation of, or the entire ness of those 22 symbols, and I express all of it. I'm the universe. Okay, so here we go. We got 4 elements. We've got ace through 10. The ace through 10 is, we can see numerological development, and there's symbols in the numbers, and those are tied to the original 22 letters of the alphabet. All those letters of the Hebrew alphabet, the Phoenician alphabet, were interchangeable with numbers until we invented, or we got Roman numerals, which are fairly primitive if you've ever tried to play with those. And then we got the Arabic numerals, which come from a Muslim tradition. They were a different technology in terms of how we number things, but originally our numbers and letters were interchangeable and had specific meaning from a symbolic perspective. Number 1, the alpha is beginning, it's creation, it's starting things, it's birth, it's conception, and all of these, well, it's the rising sun in the east. And in lots of ways it's connected, that alpha and that omega symbols are connected into deep history and oral tradition of humanity. So all of those have been compacted into a set of cards that gives us a tool for study and understanding. And why do we want to understand these things? Well, because this is the Hermetic discipline. The Hermetic discipline is to look within, is to understand the self. And by understanding the self, we can move ourselves in the direction of enlightenment, of personal development, of achieving a greater connection and union with that which we conceive of as God, as spirit, as our human potential. Now, the last thing I'll talk a little bit about is there's 3 ways, I think, of looking at tarot. One is prescriptive, one is descriptive, and the other is predictive. I'm a tarot traditionalist. There are lots of people, modern tarot practitioners, that collect large numbers of very artfully created decks and beautiful decks. And in order to distinguish oneself in the world of tarot these days, and to become, I guess, what I would call a tarot master, is to create and publish your own deck and distribute that and have people read from it. There are literally, I'm going to say there's thousands of decks out there that people have created over the years. And there are people who collect decks like that, who read and use the images in those to trigger impressions, to be able to give psychic readings for people. I'm a traditionalist in the sense that I use tarot as a tool of study, as a map that's not the territory. I very rarely turn cards. I turn cards like birthday cards and Christmas cards and things like that, as entertainment and as a way to, because it's fun and it piques people's curiosity and there's a mystery attached to it. But my belief and the way that I use tarot as a traditionalist is that it's a map, it's a discrete psychological set, and a complete book of psychology that is self-contained, that represents those major traditions of the Western mystery schools: alchemy, Kabbalah, numerology, gematria, and astrology. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Shannon Douglas. This is Chasing Quicksilver. I want to ask you, if you like this video, to please hit the like button and subscribe for notifications on new topics coming up. If you've got anything you'd like me to add into my rotation of videos or questions that you have, please post them in the comments. I'd be happy to address them.